Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Annalisa and I'm not in my house, I'm dog sitting. Here's some footage of the dog, and this is going to be my wrap up for the last half of May. Because it's June now, which came all too fast. I was really hoping to be back to a nice, happy, energetic version of myself by the time June rolled around. Pride month I really like. Just having fun with stuff in Pride month. By the time this video comes out, which will be a week into the month, maybe I will have been inspired enough and have my energy back enough to do something fun. The Queer Lit Readathon might be over by the time this goes up. I'm not sure what it is. But there are a lot of really good recommendations from it on Twitter, so I'm thinking of taking some of those, and those might be in my next month's wrap up. Chit chat aside, I have read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books to tell you about. The first 2 were ebooks, so I'm gonna find the covers so I can tell you the authors' names. The Freedom Race by Lucinda Roy. This one was a NetGalley e-arc. It's coming out in June, and I finished it in May. And this, I started off reading really slowly because it is pretty dark, and I try not to use the word depressing because that's like a specific, it's like a mental illness thing, but also discouraging maybe is a similar feeling, where there's just so much pain and darkness, and it feels overwhelming, and like the characters are powerless against it, and therefore it makes the reader feel powerless. Because this is set in a dystopian future after a second civil war in America, and basically a big section of the country, everywhere that isn't a big city basically, and isn't on either coast, I think, has gone back to a plantation style way of living along with slavery, but now they have like some futuristic technology, and they have gotten a new religion that is slightly inspired by certain interpretations of Christianity, but has taken on a new, they added a new book in addition to the Bible, and don't really read the Bible anymore, they read this new book. But anyway, it's super patriarchal, very sexist, and also very racist, and they actually use a color wheel to like standardize colorism, and that actually has an interesting link to a book that I just started reading, Twisted, which is a history of black hair, and how colorism is actually a lot based on black people's hair type, not just their skin tone. Like 2 women who have the same skin tone that's like medium light, but if one of them has super elliptical, I think is what she called it, hair that, you know, curls tighter, the person with the curlier hair will be considered more black and coincidingly more unattractive than someone with the same skin tone who has less tightly curled hair. And this book didn't go into that. They don't have like a hair wheel or a hair chart, which there's a picture of that in the book Twisted. It's all based on color in this world. So that's an interesting point that I wouldn't have thought of if I hadn't also been currently reading this other book. Super dark, but in a very, it's been very accepted by the people who live in it sort of a way, like they don't feel like they can change anything. And it's old, it's been at least a couple of generations since the Civil War happened and all this got instituted, so people are very used to it and very worn down. And our main character, Gigi, I believe is her name, was raised in it, and she's 16 years old. And the book starts out a lot with how she lives in it and with the execution of one of her mentors from when she was growing up. And there are a lot of flashbacks in the first third, I would say, about her childhood and growing up and how horrible it's been. Although her life has been a little bit less horrible than a lot of people's, because her mother is favored a lot by the white man who owns her, and so yeah, and so she's a favored daughter, one of his daughters, because there's a bit huger maybe than the old plantation style rape system, which is a breeding system where they are actually trying to get whiter and whiter Black people by having most of the women be paired with a father man who is a white man who is like a sectional, who owns like a section of a plantation. And those always hit me really hard. I really anything involving rape, especially on such a massive scale and a repeating scale, really messes with me. So it took me a long time to read this. I think I started it in April, but eventually we got into the freedom race, which is something kind of odd. I don't know why it was instituted into the plantations. It's like a system where if you race and perform really well, for the women it's just racing. For men it's also an acrobatics show. If you do really well, you can win your freedom in DC. It's a very small number, and apparently it's like a big money maker because there's a performance aspect and like people want to watch and see. I don't know, it feels too good to be true in this super dystopian world. Once we got to that portion where there was a lot more hope, and that was a lot more pleasant to read, so I got through that a bit faster, and I really liked it. I thought the world building was super in-depth, except for, you know, a couple, like the too good to be true thing. It seemed really good. There are also like mutants who were like experimented on and genetically modified creatures. Like there are these massive hyena things and some snarl cats, which are super big tiger lion things. I really liked all of that, and I also liked the main character's immediate mother, grandfather, cousins were more recently brought over from Africa than a lot of people, and so they actually have links and can remember the people that they came from and their traditions. And so I really liked that spiritual traditional aspect that kept coming in, and like origin stories that had a lot to do with the somewhat sci-fi magical aspects of it. And I found our main character very likable and understandable. Overall, once I reached that less hopeless point, it was a really enjoyable book. Could be quite disheartening and even triggering for a lot of people. So I've talked about most of the trigger warnings, but there are a few more, so look into those. Okay, the other ebook I read was With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo, and I really liked it. It was super enjoyable. I really like books that value women's arts. While it's true that most professional cooks are men because sexism, food as a thing you do for your family is very much considered women's work. I really liked how valuable it showed it being that our main character cooks for her family and for her friends, and what a gift that is to them. And how much emotion can come from food. And also me personally, I love food. It's not terribly great that it's one of the things that will make my brain immediately release the happy chemicals, because when my brain is not releasing them as much as it should, my response is to eat, and then I will get the happy chemicals, whether or not my brain feels like it. Not everybody works that way. Some people, their depression will cause them not enjoy food, and their reward responses won't work, but with me they do work. I have a bit of a difficult relationship with food, but as a whole I love it and it's super important to me, and I love cooking. I'm not super experimental, but I really like not measuring things because I've cooked something enough to know about how much it should be, and I love experimenting with baking, and our main character both cooks and bakes, and I loved all of the food scenes. It is about I think almost 18-year-old for most of the book. It covers a school year. Girl who has a 2-year-old baby who she got pregnant with when she was 14, the first time she ever had sex. Basically because schools, and I also blame parents and whoever is raising children, refuse to talk to children about sex, one, until it's too late, because they think, oh, people won't have sex till they're what, 16? No, not true. 2, not enough detail, and 3, don't put an emphasis on birth control. And in this book, a condom was even used, and it apparently didn't work. So, you know, they were more careful than a lot of teenagers. So there's a lot about how that has affected how people look at her, and the sexism inherent in that, and how she is saddled with not only taking care of her baby because she wants to do the physical taking care of the baby, but with the financial responsibility because for some reason the teen dad is not paying child support. It's about how that affects her relationship with her grandmother who raised her, because her dad is absent and her mom is dead, about how it affects her relationship with her peers, but also how her race and her gender affect her relationships with people, and how there's sexism and racism, and how wanting to accomplish anything when you have a baby in your teens and wanting to still do things is not encouraged, and not how you're seen as a failure, and like you can't amount to anything after this. That was really interesting, and the rest of it is just your normal teen contemporary relationships with boys, relationships with girls, relationships with your teachers and your guidance counselors, and your really terrible teen job. And there's also some about exploring cultures because there is a class trip to Spain. I just really had a great time. It's a really good book. It's been around for a while, so you probably heard of it, but I recommend it if you like food, if you like reading about food, if you like contemporaries that bring up subjects of race and sexuality and gender. I'm going to try to speed it up because I took forever to talk about both of those, but they were very interesting and like had a lot of stuff going on with both of them. So the next one is I'm Still Here, Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness by Austin Channing Brown. And I really like this one too. Much like Eloquent Rage, this book felt like a friend talking to you. It had facts, but it didn't feel academic, but it was well ordered and made sense, and like was grouped into good points and like subtopics, but it still felt like a real conversation with a person telling you about their life and their experience and the wider implications of those experiences, and about her feelings about those experiences. And that's something that I really like to see in nonfiction, is to really connect with the author not have it just be dry facts, feel like it's a story, but feel like it's a discussion that they're having, and like they're a real person, not just statistics or disconnected anecdotes. So it is a lot about her, a little bit about her growing up, but mostly about her working life. She, and a really interesting and not as commonly found aspect is that she is a Christian, and most of her work is in Christian circles. And so it was specifically a look at racism in Christian organizations, outreach, social programs, churches, to an extent how Christianity is used to ignore racism in some cases and to reinforce it in some cases. The author still values Christianity and values very much her relationship with God, independent of how white people use it. And so there's some talk about the Black church and Black congregations and how different it feels going into a Black congregation. It was just really helpful to read. There wasn't anything truly unexpected. Like, there was stuff that was disgusting and upsetting that Christians would do that, but also totally believable from what I know so far. And I just really appreciate the author telling her story. So yeah, then I'm going to be fairly brief about the last ones because I talk about these in tags a lot, and those are some books by J.D. Robb. I decided to reread the whole series except for the first 4 because they're not my favorites. The author really gets into her zone, gets better at writing these mysteries as she goes on. So I started with number 5, Ceremony and Death. There's good and bad witches in here. So there's people who practice Wicca, and there's also Satanists, which I don't think this is an accurate view of how Satanists work. But actually they weren't real Satanists. They were fake Satanists. They talked about Satan a lot, but it was very much their own made-up thing. But anyway, that's the gist of this one. I like it because it has some really good emotional stuff handled between the main character, Eve Dallas, who is a police homicide lieutenant, and her found family father, who was her partner and trainer, and I really enjoyed that. Then there's Vengeance and Death, which involves her husband's past coming back to bite him, which has a lot of sadness in it, but I really like the relationship between the main character and her husband as well. Plus, I love the way this author writes police procedurals. It feels really real to me and like makes sense, the way the evidence is gathered and the way the interviews and the explorations of all this stuff and the forensic evidence eventually leads to the murderer. Then there's Witness and Death, which is about actors in a Broadway play and how someone is murdered on stage when a prop knife is exchanged for a real knife. No big drama in this one between the characters, but just your normal levels of enjoyableness. I also skipped 2, so if you know the order of the series, one was Holiday and Death, which my mom was reading while I needed to read it, and I don't like that one anyway because it's a bunch of rape murders, and also Conspiracy and Death, which somehow disappeared from our shelves. I don't know where that one is. But Judgment and Death is about cops getting murdered and suspicion that they were crooked cops, and there's a great big criminal, what are they called? Mob lord? I think it's like the mob, that would be an accurate representation. And this has a lot of drama between the main character and her husband, which is somewhat distressing. So I actually, because I was at a distressing point when it was very much time to go to bed, I just skipped ahead to the resolution so I could feel soothed in my soul, because fictional characters being upset makes me upset. And then I went back and reread the rest the next day. Lots of fun. I do like drama when it's like, when there's a reason for the drama and like it makes sense that these characters with their hard heads and their different backgrounds and their different values would feel drama, would cause drama between them. And it's not just drama for drama's sake. They're like real issues that need to be worked out. And I really like over the progression of the series how once the couple has solved an issue in the past through arguing and having difficulties, in the future when they come up against the same issue, they talk to each other faster and resolve it quicker using what they've learned about each other. And I love that relationship evolution. So yeah, I have been having a really good time rereading that series, and I had a pretty good time with the other fiction books and the one nonfiction book that I finished. I started a bunch of other nonfiction books, and right now I'm doing a vlog about reading all of them while also reading J.D. Robb while I'm dog sitting, because I'm doing a very long stint of dog sitting at the moment, 13 days. So thank you so much for watching. That was my Kindle. My Kindle randomly makes that sound sometimes. I don't know why. But leave a police lady. I'm pretty sure there's an emoji for that, for an emoji today, if you want to. And as always, I'm always happy to hear about what you're reading, and if you have any thoughts about these books and anything you're looking forward to reading. And also, if you have any plans for Pride Month, or if you're enjoying like other people's Pride Month content, because I'm definitely enjoying the like TBRs that I'm seeing for the Queer Lit Readathon, and there's always a lot of great art that comes out during this month. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!
Come here, girl! There she is! There she is!